Hey everybody, thanks for stopping by. I'm gonna keep it short. You can check all the old streams up on the YouTube. This one will be up next week. But without any further ado, we can swap over and say what's up to everybody. Hey Jake, hey Alan. Pretend like we weren't just completely talking right before this. um, yeah, I guess we can do like little intros. Jake can go first, and then Alan, just how you're organized on the screen. Just a little intro about your name, what you do, and then we can get into it. Ooh, special. Mm. Wait, I feel like the audio's not working. Say stuff, and I'll see if the audio is picking you guys up. Oh, it's not picking you up right now. Did we just miss all of that? Oh no. Oh, there we go. Man, well, they just gave great intros that nobody heard. Amazing. That's so good.
You got the recording, didn't
Yeah, we have it on the other side, but yeah. Oh well.
you?
Yeah,
Somebody will hear
somebody will
them.
hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, how long? I mean, yeah, it's like I knew you, Alan, back in like 2016, I think. Yeah,
Okay, so
way
that's
back.
like five. That's 5 years, right?
Jeez, that's 5 years ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was an
And you
a
were you were an
small little
intern at
intern.
New
Yeah,
York. Yeah.
and I was just you were. I remember you sat like there, and then behind us was Sakani, and behind
Uh-huh.
Sakani was Jeremy, and I was like, these are people I've seen present at Maxon. They are the coolest of cool people. They know everything, which was true. Wasn't let down by that. Um, but yeah, it was just so crazy that it was such a big concentrate of people that I had seen before, and all the tools that like I wanted to use. And yeah, Imaginary Forces was kind enough to let me intern there and give me a lot of work of like a normal amount of work to just be fully on projects. But yeah, lots of fun times just doing stuff with Alan. And then later on, Magic Force is the first place I freelance too. Got to go there and work again with all of y'all. And then later down the road, met Jake. And we all worked on a big project.
Yes, we
Um,
did.
and yeah, it was really cool to be able to work with all of y'all, and it's been cool to see what you guys have done. I mean, Alan just like continually directing stuff, and Jake just being like, on different parts of the Eye of Fredo that I've worked on. But like, you've also in your own right had a ton of stuff. Like, you were also at Otoy, like Octane, like which is something that everyone who probably watches this and everybody else like is very familiar with in Octane. And I'm curious to like hear a bit about that, but you guys can kind of split it up. The normal question that I ask most people is like how you kind of got there. So like Alan, you said that you were like at SCAD. Jake, were you at like what kind of got you from like high school beyond into like what you do now?
Well, I was at the time, when I was in high school, I wasn't planning on going to college. I was a tattooer and body piercer at the time.
Mm.
I was just planning on doing that. I love movies and I just never really knew how to get into them. I never knew the vernacular behind them or, what to look for, what educations to seek out or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So one day I was tattooing and they were shooting Oblivion at the time in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where I was living. The Tom Cruise movie with all
Right.
the
Yeah.
UI and stuff. And some set dudes came in to get Pucifer tattoos because they were going to see a Pucifer concert while they were
Mm.
there. And I got to talking to them for a while. I'm like, yo, who's your boss? And they're like, well, that's the art director. And I'm like, who's his boss? And they're like, that's the production designer. And I'm like, so they just come up with all the cool stuff that you do because they were fabricators. They
Mm.
made like kind of the onset, rocks and stuff like that, and just the faux finishing. And so I'm like, that's really cool, but now I have like, some titles that I can kind of think about, you know what I mean? And then like cut to a couple months later, so this portfolio convention rolled around in New Orleans where a bunch of like art schools came, and you could bring your portfolio and just kind of, you can interview all the colleges, and
Right.
see
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I had never considered going to art school. So when I was talking to these people, I'm like, this sounds kind of cool, but I'm like, I already got an idea of what I want to do. It's like, there's only one thing I want to do more, and that's, work on movies potentially, or TV or whatever. I was completely ignorant at the time. And I went to each booth, and this was unintentional, but it was kind of a litmus test that I didn't mean to conduct, but I did, where I asked each representative, like, what major would you go into to become an art director? And none of the colleges could give me a clear answer. They had no idea what, like, it was such a broad term. And I was just like, I just heard this, it's like, what is it? And they're like, oh, but I got to Ringling, and I asked them, and they're like, you want to go into motion design? And I'm like, tight, okay, I'll sign up. I'll see if I can get in, and I'm like, this is still far-fetched. There's no way I'm going to get in. Even if I can't get in, how the hell am I going to pay for this? And I did end up getting in, and I was the first person in my family to go to college. So my family pulled in and put me through. And it was like, that was the biggest chance and the best break I had ever had in my life, so I was like, I'm not going to fuck around, I'm not going to squander this by any sense of the word, and I still at this point never looked up what motion design was. I just showed up day one. I'm like, what are we doing?
Right.
And they're like, you're going to learn how to animate. And I'm like, all right, let's animate. I'm going to be the best goddamn animator I know. And I put myself through it for 4 years, man. I fucking suffered, but like, diligently just stuck to my work and made it as good as I could and learn as much as I could, because I just felt behind the whole time I was there, and for no real reason other than making myself feel behind, and
Right.
so I just stuck to it. I learned the work. I got better and better and better, and I sacrificed a ton of sleep, a ton of social life just to kick ass. And eventually I landed a internship at Imaginary Forces my junior year, or after my junior year, before my senior year. And that's where I met Michelle Doherty and Charles Corey and Dan Meehan and just Miguel Lee, like all the heavy hitters from LA. And these were the most badass people I had ever met, similar to what you were saying, about Sakani and Jeremy and Allan. It's like, I just couldn't believe I was around so much immense talent. They taught me so much, and not even like directly taught me, but just kind of provided the facility and for me to teach myself and kind of ask me the questions to ask. And that's kind of what Ringling did too. It's like you learn a lot from art institutions and just like any other kind of learning space, that if you go in there with the expectation that they're just going to teach you things, you'll never learn anything. It's like you really have to take it upon yourself in order to learn how to learn, and learn how to teach yourself and learn how to find resources. They more so teach you theory. They more so teach you what to ask. They show you where the door is, and you have to learn how to open it on your own. I've seen a bunch of people just fizzle out because they kind of had the expectation that they would just be learning technique and procedure, and it never came, and it's like they were always waiting to learn that stuff. And so I learned a ton that internship, and went back my senior year, kicked ass, and graduated. And then I took a full-time position at IF in 2016, and that's actually the first time I think I met you, Allan. Like I met you at a Emmy party. You were there for Vinyl. I was there for Jessica Jones. Neither of us won. But yeah, it was a very brief conversation, but I just remember I'm like, who's this tall, lumbering motherfucker? Like, who is he? Everybody wants to talk to him. And
lumbering is a good adjective. Yeah, that's perfectly describes it.
And I told him, I was like, I'm working a lot with Karen, she's really great. And, I know Karen was a huge mentor to you, Allan, and she was probably the biggest mentor I've ever had. You know, it's like I've learned more from Karen than I've learned probably from so many others combined. And
Right.
you know, you were basically like, just don't die, just stick with it and keep your head up and just enjoy the ride, you know. And I'm like, that means a lot, man. And I didn't see it for like 2 years. and then we turned up on a crazy ass project together.
Yes, I know. That's a shame when I think about those 2 years too, because I was like, man, because I remember you there, because you were with Karen. I think Karen actually introduced you to me, and just you could tell from the way, you know, she introduces everyone so lovely, but I could tell in the way that she introduced you that this was another level of sincerity. Yeah, it's crazy that 2 years went by, but yeah, now we're working together. We work together a lot, and it's been awesome. It's been really great.
Yeah, consistently my favorite CD to work with. I love Karen to death. I do.
Ooh.
As a person.
That's on record now. That's on record. Official favorite
she's amazing.
CD.
No, she is amazing. And she knows she can go off the rails. You know, she needs a little bit of reining in. But that is exactly where her creative genius lies. You know, it's just not knowing when to stop, because it creates some of the most original and like fulfilling content, you know, that I've ever had the pleasure of working on. It is a triathlon working with Karen Fung, by all means. You know, there's nothing casual about it, but you know that if you have it in you to do that kind of work with her, you know, it's again some of the most fulfilling stuff you can do. But yeah, I love Allan. I love working with you, man, because you're just chill as hell. and we come from the same background, so we can talk technical, you know, so that makes it a lot easier too.
Yeah, I feel like that's like something that I responded to, is like a lot of the stuff you were like in Cinema 4D, like when I would turn around even as an intern, and it's like that was something that like I didn't see a lot of CDs doing. Like they kind of like just had like grandiose ideas and would be like, I don't know, figure out how to execute on it. And you'd be like, well, like I whipped something up and like we could like look at this and maybe you could like expand upon it. And it's like, wow, that's a great like base. Like it's not just like some Photoshop sketch. But yeah, I remember that's like my first thing. You were like showing me the project we were working on. You're like, I think we could do this, but I don't really know. And it's like, yeah, that's probably like the best bet to go with. And you kind of like just took like, I feel like when you were talking to me about how you like kind of just made that advancement, kind of like you were saying, Jake, it's like art director, it's like how you know, you can be senior designer, you can be like anything, but like how do you like jump up to like art directing? Seems like this like other weird thing that like just gets either assigned to you or you just one day say you're doing that and then you are doing that if you get booked for it. But like Allan, you just, there was an open opportunity, right? And you were just like, I'll do that. And everyone's like, okay, if you can, you can. If you can't, you can't. And it was like sink or swim. Yeah. So I feel like that's like an interesting thing for a lot of people that are always, it's like this kind of like magical title that like no one knows how, like what work do you do? What kind of thing do you do? But you just kind of took a chance of like, you were at a place, there was an opportunity, and you just like kind of grabbed it and were like, I'll run with this and like work really hard to make sure it works.
Yeah, that was that. You might be thinking about like when I would start creative directing.
Right. Oh yeah.
Art directing was a little. It's always vague at IF. It's getting a little bit more clear, but it just like in the past at least, it was something that like if your designs were chosen, like I think one of the first few of those patterns was like South Park with Karen, and I'd done a concept and they went with it. Karen's going to get slammed. You know, she's going to have a lot of stuff on her plate, so she's going to not always be around. And at some point, there is this trust that you start to develop with the designer that you can say, you know what, I can't make dailies right now, but you know, Jake's got it, or whatever, that type of thing. And so the art directing lingo kind of starts to roll into that. The creative director gig was just I started out of SCAD. I went to Buck and IF and Brand New School and all those places, and literally I told them I wanted to be hired right then and there as a director. As crazy as that sounds, out of school, I had a professor, Jeff Bortz at SCAD, and my thesis was like, it was really a lot of live action in it, and I took it into anthropology and tried to sell it as a campaign to them, but it was this kind of hefty thing that I was trying to kind of take around to other studios as a way of getting into directing. And I had a professor who was like, hey, I've seen, he was so encouraging to me, and I couldn't have been more terrified to even be an intern at these places. So you can imagine walking into those places and those words coming out of your mouth. I was terrified, but he was like, Allan, if you say it, like if you go in there, he's like, I believe you're a director, like do it. And I knew I wanted to work with Karen in the IF because I had intern there, and basically Peter and Karen were just like, this is the process of becoming a director. Like as much as we, believe you can do it, it takes some time. And it was I think the first gig was a Hyundai Walking Dead spot, and it was 2 weeks. Yeah, I overheard other directors talking about it. They had no script, they had nothing, and they just needed it to be done in 2 weeks. And all the other directors were slammed. And it was a producer, Casey Barton, at the time, and I just walked downstairs and said, I want to direct it. And we were friends, so she knew I'd always wanted this opportunity. So she's like, okay. And she picked up the phone and called Peter. So that's testimony to Casey of being amazing and having faith and believing in me. And then Peter was like, let's give him a shot. Like he can only like, no one else can do it. So it's not like there's a huge loss here. And from that point on, it went really well. And from that point on, it was just kind of like your name just shows up kind of in the director roster. It's different when you start as an intern versus like if I left IF now and went to Buck or somewhere and then there's like an announcement or something, right? It's like you're working your way up from an intern. So it is a little bit more organic in that process. But I truly believe it's not an IF thing. I just think it's and I don't even think it's an industry thing. I think it's just maybe it's just a career thing to really, you have to make these decisions for yourself. You have to raise your hand for yourself. People aren't just going to hand this stuff to you. And a lot of times it goes exactly back to what Jake was saying. If you just sat back, and I'm the same way at SCAD, if I just sat back and was like, I'm going to, just as long as I make an A, then I know I'm doing good, or just as long as this professor, or I'm doing what the professor teaches me and not looking anywhere else, then I'm good. We all know, like, it takes so much more. It's such an autodidactic thing, this industry. You have to constantly kind of learn. So it's just step out. If it's something that you want to do, whether it's art directing or literally working at your dream company, apart from the hard work, you're gonna ultimately just have to take that initiative and take a gamble and step out.
Yeah, I feel like even just like getting the internship already like was like I sent like hundreds of emails and like got 2 back, and like one was IF and like one was somewhere else. It's like people think that like, I mean, I went from like a small arts college, and it's like there was no like program or person to like set up like, oh, we go here, like this is like the studios we're in contact with. It was like they're like, I don't know, you have to get one or else you can't, like, you need that to like move on to the next year. It's like, okay, I'm gonna get one. And it's just, yeah, just like a lot of like your own kind of willpower to like move forward and like do stuff. But that, I mean, carries into like, Jake, you're like a big freelancer, and like a lot of freelance is just like willpower to like continually keep up with studios, keep relations going, like continue to like know who you have like what with, and like keep it all kind of mentally or like in some organized area, and then like know like, you're not just gonna like continually be handed like the next setup gig and the next setup gig. Like you have to kind of be like on it or plan it. And I think that that's something that like I didn't foresee a lot in like going freelance. I was like, oh well, like people reach out when I was staff, people reach out when I'm freelance. It's like, nope, you still have to kind of like let people know, keep things going up, and like it still carries over just as much. Like I think staff is like a little bit easier because like you think that there's like, oh well, I'll get like a promotion, I'll go up the ranks, there's like ranks to go up, but freelance there's not as much. But I think that it's the willpower to kind of set goals for yourself and like chase them is like across like a lot of it, and also learn new skills. Like I'm curious, like between you guys, like as you get up there, do you think that like learning new stuff or like new talents, or like honing the ones you currently have, like which is kind of something you find yourself doing more? Do you think that like it's better for you at like kind of senior or like creative director level just to like hone your stuff, or are you too busy just kind of working on the things that you have to even think about like, oh, let's pick up that new program, that new skill, or anything?
Allan, I'll let
Jake, you want to talk? Okay. Yeah, I mean, you guys had kind of mentioned before, like working with me, I'd show like, or especially with Isaac, I would show enough of like, here's a little thing I
Hmm.
did in cinema. I'll take it and do something. Yeah, that was my background, and 11 years ago is when I graduated. So uh, we learned cinema 4D and After Effects and all that stuff at SCAD, and then coming out, I always told myself I don't want to get too far away from the box, because what if I'm not promoted to a director, or what if when I am a director, I have a team and my team doesn't come through and I can save the
Mm.
day, or what if the company falls through and I get demoted and I need to go back to freelance being a designer? Like there's all those thoughts that go through my head of why I wanted to try as much as possible to continue learning and staying in software. As much as I try to do that, the reality is, when life with, I mean, I'm not just going to throw this all on being a creative director. It also comes with just, I have three kids now and stuff like that. But as a director of Imaginary Forces, it can get, there's a lot of different layers of jobs that can happen
Hmm.
at one time, right? Which is not just specific to them, just to this industry in general. And so you have these opportunities in front of you of like, okay, I can spend half of this day working through this frame, going into Cinema 4D, or I can take, have faith in my artist, hand it to them, and then pursue this pitch that's over here. And I think what's always happening with me is that there's always this questioning that's happening of getting better at becoming someone at pitching and speaking and concepting and just
Hmm.
being a politically, like front facing person with a client, that guy.
Right.
And then the person over here who I initially started off as is like, if I have to ever jump ship, like I can keep working in Photoshop. I mean, without a doubt, I've shifted more to that side. Like, I don't know Octane, like I don't know Redshift. Like, it's as crazy as that sounds for like a lot of your younger audience. Like that wasn't even a conversation 11 years ago coming out of
Right.
SCAD. Like, it's not that it didn't exist. It's not like certain people weren't using it, but just like companies weren't requiring it in the least. So
Hmm.
so it's just already like you start to feel, like, oh, I'm investing on this side versus that side. But I make that decision oftentimes because I also am just as happy. My undergrad was in English and had a minor in this philosophy. It's called the history of ideas. And I really love, I just love writing. I love concepting. I love being on that side of it. So if I'm able to do that, whether it's, if I'm able to create something, whether it's in Microsoft Word or in Photoshop or in Cinema 4D, it doesn't really matter the outlet for me. It's just as long as I am involved with that process. So I still get that fulfillment on that side, and yeah, so I'm happy with that.
Yep, I feel like that makes a lot of sense. Of like, that's something that I think a lot of people, when you start to hit that like upper echelon of like artistry, you're like, do I need to have all of these skills at like the maximum level, or do I need to be able to convey my ideas better and delegate better and like learn a lot of that? And so like Jake, like in like a senior level, do you feel like you've kind of started just honing certain skills? I mean, it feels like you're still like a pretty great generalist in like a lot of stuff where it's like when we're on projects together, but you're also like really great about being able to be like, these are the key things. Let's delegate these out to like these artists that are also working on this project and just get stuff done and kind of side of things.
Um, I mean, I've honestly like any kind of artistic badassery has just come from that, baptism by fire. I was so used to just doing jobs solo
Hmm.
and filling every single role on a job, including the client interfacing side of it. It's like I was staff, but I have been freelancing for the last almost 9 years, just,
Hmm.
and, this is the first time that in the last, you know, 3 years that I've been, or I guess 4 years that I've been freelancing at studios, where I have teams and stuff like that. But all the time before that, and still during the time that I've been freelancing, I've had just so many side clients that I've dealt with directly that haven't gone through a studio or an agency or anything like that. So it's just been, a lot of trial and error. And before that, I was so fascinated, and I was so young, and I had so much like fire to just learn and grow in the 3D realm. I was obsessed with photoreal 3D rendering. I loved it, and I loved being able to get all these super rich images out of my head and be able to put them into like a realistic space. Because I mean, it's like I've always kind of had that kind of imagination. I just never really had the catalyst to create something that people could see and be like, wow, I can feel this. I can look at this and know how this feels. And when I discovered that I could do that with 3D, and I could do it kind of naturally, like I was able to learn it pretty easily,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, this is me. But then it's like I just, generalism will always be a skill that I love, but I can honestly say it's not something I've tried to get better at or learned anything new with intentionally in years. I've just been, if somebody asked me to do something, I'll do it. If somebody asked me to like do something that I've never done before, I'll say that. But I'll also say, like, I'll give it a shot if you have no other options, and usually when I do, I figure it out. And that's how I'll add a new skill. But it's like it really is, the delegation is so important, and being able to recognize talent is so important. Being able to set other artists up for success is a skill that nobody talks about. Alan, I'm sure you've dealt with that a lot, where you have, I mean, it's like you book people for a job, and for one, you don't want to go through the awkward thing of unbooking them. For two, you don't want to be a man short, so it's like, all right, I'm going to actually, sit down and make it work with this person, and recognizing a language that other people, respond to, and being able to change the way that you talk and communicate on an individual level is such an important skill, and when it does come to delegation and figuring out hierarchy of tasks, and also, just matching skill sets with tasks is, it's something that takes a lot of work and a lot of practice, and it is scary as hell. It never, no matter how good you are at it, it never stops being scary. You're never just going to be like, oh, I know how to talk to everyone. I know exactly what type of work everyone is going to respond to. Everybody you meet is different, and everybody can be useful. So it's like everybody has a skill that they can bring to the table, and everybody knows how to do something that nobody else does. You just have to unlock whatever that thing is. That being said, I've been privileged enough to work with some of the most incredibly talented people I've ever met, and they are just amazing creatives, and that's, I haven't done too many solo gigs in the past couple years, a few small unmentionables, but as far as big projects, it is such a huge collaborative effort, and just being able to come together as a team and create something like that makes you feel so strong and so proud, and that it creates like a lifelong bond. It's like, dude, the whole the whole roster for Mahina, it's like I'll never forget you guys, like that fucking Jamad and Ella, and like, you and Kyun and Henry and Alan, John, and it's just
And Ross,
that was
who solved a lot of issues,
that was a
where we're
haul,
like,
dude.
yeah,
And that job, like, me and Henry kind of theorized a pipeline for that, but we couldn't fully test it until it was too late. So we just prayed the whole time that it would work, and it did. And it did,
Yeah.
And like that is euphoria, to have to just just pull something out of completely thin air, and pull the procedure out of thin air, and then have it work. It's like building like an airplane with no instruction manual, and it has to fly.
yeah, that's like your end goal, is like, that it has to fly, and you're like,
It has to
that's
go.
what it has to do. And then you like have a few
Yeah.
steps. I feel like that was a lot of it, where it's like, man, like I would continually talk to my wife and be like, this thing's in there, and I just have no clue how we're gonna do it. And then she'd be like, oh well, okay, like, and I was like, but we kind of have to, like, we can't just edit it out, like, we have this story. And being on it for like, so long, it's like,
Oh my God,
yeah,
yeah.
it's just like, it's very nice to like see it. And then like I think, I mean, you and Henry worked on it like even after like everyone was kind of like done with it. It was like you
Yeah.
guys
Oh,
like
yeah.
did like more passes on it, and like being able to see it kind of after the fact was like really cool. And if ever no one knows what we're talking about, it's a great project that all of us were a part of at IF for SK2. We did like this short story for Mahina. There was another great one that was also working at like sort of like started ramping up at the same time that you guys got to work on, which was really cool to see that come out. But it was just like at that point I had mostly worked on like commercial stuff that was like, you know, social posts or commercial or like just like a lot less thought put into it. And that was kind of the coolest part for me about a lot of it was like there was a lot of thought, like, you know, between like how the like stuff was laid out like to be authentic. And I think that that's something great in the behind the scenes that you did, Alan, was like talking kind of to that stuff of like, you know, we're obviously a bunch of white dudes working on this thing that like needs to be authentic to the culture, and you know, working with the team that was keeping it authentic to that was something where it's like we would lay out a room and they'd be like, absolutely not, that is not correct. Those mats actually
Every
have to be
time.
arranged in a certain order and you guys did not do that. Or it's like that tree doesn't grow there, it's like, can you just let us make a forest? And they're like, no, it has to be correct. And a lot of that was, you know, in the moment you're like, wow, this is very detailed, but at the end I think it really pulled together. um, but yeah, I think that it really spoke to a lot of, you know, you and Henry's vision and Alan's vision for it. Mixing in the live action was very cool, but I think that it's such a unique piece too.
Yeah, it's
Also, like
special.
the artwork that was done from the original artist, and bringing all of the Henry stuff they figured out with all of the kimonos and all of
Mhm.
that stuff is just so detailed. But
Yeah,
labor of love for
definitely.
six,
Yes.
eight.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's built on passion. I think we also all probably qualify for at least a minor in like Edo period Japanese history.
True. Yeah.
Like, dude, I know so much shit now
Yeah.
about
Right.
Japanese architecture and like and culture and where and like what time of day you do what and like so how to sleep properly, it's like the names of the hairstyles like and that's kind of another really great thing about our job that a lot of people don't consider, especially a lot of students today. Like I'll do, Alan, I know you do it too, but it's like I'll do uni talks whenever I can, whenever they come up, just to talk to any kind of kids that are in college now, and they're so fixated on the tech.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
and I was the same way. I was so bright-eyed when I was in college, and I was so like, oh, what's the new greatest coolest render, and it's like there's all these graybeards at the college that are like, it's about concept, it's about thought, it's about the power of ideas. And I'm like, yeah, but how do I light it better? But when you
Mhm.
get into it and you get these really hard-hitting jobs that really make you sit there in your off hours and think and consider, how do I make this striking,
Mhm.
and you come up with a striking idea, and the visuals that come from that just are striking on their own, simply because they represent such a powerful idea. And not only that, but the context. When you learn the context and just how to kind of drive these ideas and to create a believable environment, like what we tried to do, for Mahina, you realize there's so much of this, like almost like artistic like anthropology in it, and you,
Mm.
you just like you learn about like architecture, you learn about old cultures, even when you're doing portraits and stuff, you learn about like all this anatomy. It's like people don't realize that visual artists, in order to create believable things, they need to know a lot of shit. They need to know all about how things work. It's like I found myself, because I do a lot of portraiture and like CG portraiture and stuff like that, and I try to capture human realism in CG, and it's super difficult, but I find myself all the time like finding anatomical PDFs that I'm looking through, and I'm looking through like how hair works, where do follicles lie, like what creates the texture around hair follicles, what creates like the capillaries in your ears, shit like that, and it's like all in the pursuit of how to create a believable piece of artwork, you know, and I think that that's a feature to what we do that is both so amazing and exciting that nobody tells you about, you know. And
It's
it's such
also
a treat.
the part of like collaboration. Like each person has their own amount of like
Hmm.
individual research, and I think that that's something that, yeah, in solo work, it's all on you to like find every vein. But like I think a lot of, I mean, the behind the scenes of stuff of like projects you work on, Alan, is like deep research into like stuff, and then like pulling out of it like what you want from, you know, like vinyl to like the and with an e kind of stuff is like finding other collaborations that will like bring their own amount of either learned experience or research they've already done throughout their whole life, and like as long as you can like kind of hijack onto those sorts of things, you can bring it in to like enrich the whole project as a whole kind of thing. And I'm curious, like between you guys, like, I mean, do you like, you obviously I think would prefer like collaboration, like I think that as the higher you go and the bigger the projects are, the more you realize that like collaboration with other like great achieving artists is like just allows like better ideas and better end products kind of at the end of the day, like versus trying to siphon all of that or like harness all of that energy and like experience and power and like talent on your own to like create a real great product at the end of the day. Like collaboration is kind of like the easy kind of way around that sort of thing. And like what do you look in like with artists to collaborate with, like, you know, from like hiring all the way to like, you know, Alan, some of the painters that you've like seeked out to like work with for different projects or other things like that?
Uh, yeah, I mean, as cliche as it sounds about collaboration, it can't be said enough. It's especially in the role of a director, like
Mm.
it's hard to take credit for stuff. I mean, like I know where my places are in the process. Um, but I also like if I could put one thing out there, like my legacy is that I listen. Like I really believe. I don't think there's a distinction. Like if like my wife looks at something that I'm creating versus Karen Fong, and they're both valid to me. It doesn't mean I'm going to take and do anything with them, like actually change the thing, but to listen to what
Mm.
they're saying. And the reason I think if I've had, you know, how, you know, asking like, well, you know, start off as an intern and creative director, that process for me, like if I could put it into one place, one bucket, it's that ability to listen and empathize that I've really tried to pour into as much as possible, because I'll go up against these heroes, like you put me beside this person on Photoshop or Cinema 4D or the port. I mean, if you looked at the SK2 directors I pitched against for Mahina, like one of them just won an Academy Award, like for directing a feature.
Mm.
And it didn't. So it had to come down to. Oftentimes, it did. Those wins don't come down to, is the frame that I made the prettiest, or the artist that I worked with framed the prettiest. A lot of times I sincerely believe it just comes down to taking your client, your showrunner, whoever it is, uh, taking what they say like really seriously and asking the right questions and listening. And because oftentimes we are really good at abstracting things, we're really good at poetry and motion graphics and flipping things around, and we have pipelines that we're so comfortable with that we can literally take anything and shove it through that pipeline and make something that will work. But that's not, at the end of the day, what person's asking you to do, is to make something that will get a lot of likes on Vimeo,
Mm.
or you know, or to make you look flashy or make cinema look good or Octane. Like at the end of the day, like they're looking for something that's going to absolutely elevate and celebrate and so like summarize whatever that thing is that they have. And that really does just require a lot of listening. And that listening, so that starts with the pitch, and that goes all the way through the pipeline process with artists. You know, like I can remember with badminton, you know, when we want, so there's two jobs for SK2, and they are both large thing. They're over 6 minute films. And when we had Mahina, halfway through that, or towards even the beginning of it, when I was in Tahiti shooting this, we were given, just handed over from another company was working on it, and they didn't like it. But the badminton gig, and I'm really bad at saying no, especially if it's something cool. Like that's why I have producers in my life. But it's like for whatever reason we said yes, as insane as that sounded. And I remember going up to I flew into LA towards the last few weeks of this job when it needed to deliver, and sitting down with Jake and just being like, Jake's just like, there's no way this job's gonna get finished. Like it can't. It's like yeah, like let's just pretend the deadline was June. He's like, maybe we can get it by August 1st, man. I don't know. And I'm like, I can't hear that, Jake. It's like it has to be done by June. Like so what does that mean? And it doesn't mean when he says like the egotistical, arrogant, I'm a director, I got this, might just say, nah, Jake. But instead it's like, okay, let's listen. Like I remember talking to Tiffany, she's a general manager, she like first started working there, she's like, Jake thinks this isn't gonna be done for like 2 months, we gotta regroup. And it's like those things throughout my career of just listening to other people, it makes such a difference. If you go into this career as an island, like you can go into an island type mentality, that's called like being a fine artist, and if you can make it with a gallery and sell something, good. If you want to sell things, and that's what, like, I hate it, like it's not art, it can be artistic, you can be creative, but at the end of the day we all know our souls have to be set aside.
Yeah.
If you want to do this industry, you have to understand your role and what you are, and you're someone else's, you're the mouthpiece, of a brand, of something else. So yeah, I think that is absolutely. And when I look at other people, just to answer your question about even hiring people, it's people that are really able to tap in to that kind of awareness of something bigger than what they're comfortable in, bigger than what their skill set is in, able to just say like, you know what, like I don't care at all about this like heartburn medication, but I'm going to find a way to be passionate about this for 3 weeks, that type of stuff.
Mhm.
I think empathy, as much as you've heard it said, empathy is like it's the most like potent thing I look for in people, and it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, nailed it on the head.
Perfect. We can kind of get into this, is one that I ask a lot of people, and you guys have worked on plethora of projects, but is there like a Mount Everest project that you would want to work on, or is there one that like was on your bucket list to work on and you've already kind of like scratched it off? I know, Allan, recently you got to do somewhat of a bucket list thing with the Larry David thing, that you guys got to work on, but is there something that's still out there for y'all, or is there something that you kind of like in the moment you're like, this is like my dream, I'm working on like my dream thing?
Take it, Jake.
You know, I've gotten the chance to work on a bunch of dream things. It's like when I was in college, when we were seniors, we got in a big auditorium, and our department head put us on the spot, and he was like, all right, tell all the underclassmen what you guys want to do when you graduate, and it was super awkward, and nobody was prepared for that at all. And I had never even given it some thought. It's like, and I told myself, at the time, it's like I had gotten out of my internship with IF. I had worked on some awesome main titles there. I'm like, I just want to do main titles for a living, when I get out of here. That sounds great, and I got to make some of the coolest main titles. I got an Emmy for a main title, and it's like, okay, I've done that. Like, kind of at that point, I was like, that felt great. That was awesome. Main titles are kind of hard. I'm gonna go do some other stuff now, and it's like, and then, your goals, they fluctuate, your Mount Everest, it changes a lot, and the height of your Mount Everest changes. It's like your goals are so based off of whatever your individual reality is
Right.
in that year, or cluster of years. It's like my Mount Everest after that was to chill out, and discover a life outside of work. And I got to do that too. That's when I started working at Otoy, and it was ideal for that. And it's like now I freelance, and now it's like I kind of have this creative hunger again, but my time is really short being a dad, and You know, I find it hard to stay motivated for a lot of personal pieces, but I have had full music videos for multiple songs in my head, full CG character driven narratives, you know, that aren't really shorter than 4 minutes or so, that I've been dying to make, you know, for years and years. So
Mm-hmm.
eventually, if I can do that, I will be stoked.
Cool. Alan, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great answer, Jake, because it does change. I mean, it changes
Mm-hmm.
yearly for me, of what where you want to be. I mean, imaginary forces was going to be a springboard, and it's hard to even say now with a straight face because I know what all it entails a little bit more at least. I thought it was a springboard to being a filmmaker.
Mm.
I don't know. I don't know many title designers. Well, maybe now because it's way different, but at least even 11 years ago for me, and like I don't know. I didn't say like when I was in high school I would be a title designer. I probably didn't even know what that was. Like I like to tell stories, and whether I'm filming stuff in my backyard or you know going to SCAD, I was like, should I go into cinematography? What's this motion media stuff? Like I've learned cinema 4D, you know, stuff like that. I was like trying to figure out where exactly that was, but I just knew I liked to like to tell stories and all that stuff. And then as you got older, and even like a few years into IF, I was like, it was in the back of my mind. I was like trying to find like a really good DP. I was trying to work on a script. I was trying to like find ways to get up there. And you certainly can. Like I've got friends that did Kickstarter projects, and now they're just like the hottest directors on the planet, and they're right starting into their feature film career. But for me, it was what was a huge turning point was when I became a dad, and so that was 5 years ago. And it doesn't, and you have to ask me again 5 years from now, or when my kid's going through adolescence and he's got more important things than me on his mind, it could completely go back to wanting to pursue
Mhm.
that. And if it does, I'll try it. Whether or not I can make it, who knows? But I'll give it a shot. But right now, like those 5 years ago, it completely the kind of like dream, the Everest that Jake's talking about is I get really excited when I'm able to make the company that's went out on a limb for me a lot of money, and I'm able to do that and be there for my family. Like that to me, like that thing. And notice I say money because I don't say like an Emmy
Mm.
or a really cool like interview or what it's like all the stuff that like I know like probably Jake coming out of school I was like very similar way like you look at your peers you look at like people and they go on the red carpet and they get that and it's just like that experience it's so like it seems like that's the standard to get to but it's like that things just change like you just have kids and you're like I don't really like for me I want to be creative and I want to make really great stuff but like I'm really happy sometimes like if I just wait something like for a tech company that no one will ever see
Oh yeah.
but it made them really happy like they become my audience like before motionographer was my audience like 7 years ago but now it's some dude who I'll never see again who really needs to impress his director at whatever that tech company is and I'm able to like get in the head of that guy and care and want to make it work and if I'm able to do that and make Peter and Chip money make them happy and yet also play with my kids before the sun goes down like it's the dream like I don't ever look back. I don't even know how I did it, to be honest. Because there was a couple of years in New York when my son was born, where I'm doing that commute on the subway, and not, I'm missing dinner almost every other night, not putting him to bed for bedtime story. And though he doesn't remember it, I would go work at UPS. I'd change careers in a second if I, in contrast to that life. Like I just won't ever do it again.
Yeah.
So they 100% changed. I mean, filming Larry David, like all that stuff. Like I literally tweeted it was a bucket list thing, and that wasn't a joke. Like he's so funny. I used to have all of the seasons on DVD, like back in the day when people had DVDs. It's surreal, like when you walk into those things. But at the same time, when I get on a call with guys like you, and we're about to start a job like Mahina or whatever it is, and everybody just really gives it their all, even though they don't have to. It is a euphoria behind that of just the belief in humanity. It's like a beautiful machine of people who don't have to but do because they care, and that stuff makes me want to wake up and go to work. It's so cool. So I'm happy. I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Always the poet.
Yeah, I mean, back to even getting on jobs with like people that really care. It's kind of like, I don't know. I think of a lot of it as like a cast of like a theater production or anything. I don't know if you guys did that in like school, but like when everyone's like deciding like, yeah, even if it's a nothing throwaway project, but deciding like we're gonna go through it and like be in the trenches. Like I know that like Alan and I and like I mean Jake and some of the producers would be like late nights, but like the fact that other people were there, like even like we were doing it remote, like on Slack, just to like you would send stuff and it wasn't like you were like in a silo doing stuff alone. You would be like, oh, everyone's like trudging through this because we have to get it done, or else it just won't be done. It wasn't like, you know, other jobs where I found it's like, we'll just push it to tomorrow and like, you know, who cares. It's like we are already against like the gun going into this thing. Like you are the one person doing 3 jobs, the other person's doing 4 jobs. It's like you have to do it. That kind of stuff is like, you know, not as fun in the moment when you're like, well, here's another weekend that we're gonna go into it. But looking back on it, it's like, yeah, just very fond and like, you know, kind of hyper speeds the like relationship you have with those artists because you're all kind of in the same situation, which is fun for a moment. But I mean, yeah, definitely the balance of like life of, you know, doing it for a couple years is like kind of I think the max. And then after that you're like, man, would I like to have dinner and not miss Thanksgiving and like actually be able to spend some time with the people that you're working so hard for. That's like another big thing. I think that that's like a weird turn that like grind culture took, and was just like do it forever. It's like, and that will be fun. It's like, no, there has to be like some balance and like payoff and like ROI for the insane hard work that you do. I think we're coming up to the end. Are there any projects that you all are working on that you want to shout out, or things that you're doing currently, or any ending remarks that you kind of want to bow tie this all with?
For projects, you know, nothing that anybody gives a shit about. But as far as, you know, I guess inspiration, you know, just at the end of the day, do what makes you happy. Don't feel pressured into not working late. If working late makes you happy, don't feel pressured into, you know, leaving early to have dinner if that's what makes you happy. You know, it's like it's totally up to your individual reality. And yeah, I don't think you're ever going to let yourself down by having your priorities change. You know,
Right.
things change your reality all the time. And I think just being able to listen to yourself is the most important thing you can do.
Well said.
Yeah, there's working on a title. I don't even know if I can talk about it, but it's cool. It's involving VHS.
Ooh.
Which the last time I worked with an older medium was vinyl with Super 8. So that's been fun. And also like, you know, I shot that too. So this is also me like going back and shooting it with a VHS camera and doing all that. So that's a lot of fun. And a lot of other stuff that I'm excited about too, but maybe nobody else would care about, even if I could talk about it. You know, I feel like with IF or, you know, places like Alaska IF or whatever, it's like the titles and stuff like that really get people's attention. But and I think that's I'll just piggyback on what Jake said. There is that time for everything. Like it's easy to get in your little perspective, like me right now, who's in a totally different place than a 21-year-old coming out of school, like totally different place, you know, like, so in regards to what my Everest is. But like if you're finding joy from that, like pursuing that Emmy and creating those really hard hitting categories that require the late nights, do it. Like that's awesome, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But like what Jake was saying, I think that's a really good message, because oftentimes you get so in your perspective and you communicate your perspective because that's all you've got. People hear it and they feel like, oh, maybe I'm a workaholic because I'm at the office every night. Well, you're only, in my mind, the workaholic if other things are falling below in priority, you know, that matter to you. So yeah, I think it's really good to every single day just reevaluate, right, where you are, what city you're in. I'll just throw that in there. 3 years ago I left New York, and it was the best decision of my life. I missed people there and stuff like that. But it was for me a huge, really important decision. So that's just one of 1,000 things to just always relook at. You know, a new month comes up, like relook at it. Is this the right company? Is this the right girlfriend? Is this the right, you know, whatever it is, is singlehood the best thing for me? You know, I guess you can't like revert things if you already have kids.
Are kids the best choice for me? Adoption, foster care.
Yeah,
There's so many options that you could do.
I could sit them away. Yeah.
Boarding school.
I'll take them.
Yeah. Please, I know, right? More the better.
Yeah.
Awesome.
God, it's scary.
Well, this was so good catching up.
Yeah, you as well.
I think a lot of good bits for, you know, this is something that I would want to watch when I was like coming out of high school, or even going out of college. And like, there's just so many unknowns, and there's a lot you can read, but like, it's better when people can kind of get the stories together, and kind of share that knowledge. And I think that that's one of the best parts of like the online stuff. And you know, the oversharing of knowledge is better in this industry. I mean, more so it was like a lot more black box when you guys came in into the industry, and it's like only gotten better for everyone. So super excited about that. So thank you guys for getting on here, and thank you everybody for stopping by. This will be up on YouTube after this, and have a good rest of your weekend.
All right, bye. Thanks for having us, man.
Thanks, guys.